Having now covered 100 chapters of this Viking manga series, the time has come for me to talk about the largest and most inconsistent portion of the story yet, the Eastern Expedition arc. I'll be breaking down my analysis into smaller chunks for easier consumption, so sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for part 3 of my Vinland Saga blind review series. The Fettered Tern, chapters 100 through 113. The first question that popped in my head when reading these chapters was, what exactly is a Fettered Tern? A quick Google search later, and the answer I came to find was that it meant a caged bird. How appropriate of a phrase that was for these chapters. During the events of the Fettered Tern, readers are introduced to our proverbial bird in a cage, Gudrid. Wanting nothing more than to be free and to explore the world, she is always having to fight against the rigid gender roles of the early 11th century. I instantly came to love her character because of how she handled herself in a very proactive way. Elsewhere, we get the bittersweet homecoming to Thorfinn, who has mostly been forgotten by everyone in his home village, including his own sister. The reunions are cut short as our crew of Thorfinn, Einar, Leif, and other Thorfinn immediately get to planning their eventual trip to Vinland. As one would expect from most stories, complications arise, which means Vinland will have to wait because our characters need money and a lot of it. This is where the first sign of trouble arose for me. It's decided that the only way to get the supplies for going west to Vinland is to instead set sail east to Greece, an estimated 2-year-long detour. I'll touch again on this a bit later on in the review. As fate would have it, our crew are getting ready to head out to sea. Gudrid runs into a bit of trouble involving her arranged marriage and is in need of a ride away from the village. So, everybody hops on board and off to Greece we go. The Hunter and the Hunted, chapters 114 through 124. These chapters were a wild ride. Upon landing on the shores of Norway, the crew immediately are attacked by a ferocious bear. The day is saved thanks to the intervention of a character named Hild. Drama is not far behind as we discover the backstory of Hild and how she is not as friendly as we were led to believe at first. While the act of reading these chapters are very exciting and worth the time, my main gripe is how there isn't a whole lot new going on. Characters fueled by revenge, going the extra mile to try and achieve said goals has been done a lot in this series so far. With that said though, this is still a solid rendition of that worn out trope. On a more positive note, I love how Hild continues the trend of female characters who break away from the usual gender roles of the Viking setting and succeed in becoming a complete badass who earns a reputation in my book. The War in the Baltic, chapters 125 through 165. Okay, so this next part is a bit of a mixed bag for me. Despite tying directly into the events of the prologue more closely than the previous sections of the story, this arc feels more detached from the entire series altogether. Even the Farmland arc felt like it carried the story and themes more closely than this part does. As our heroes stop at a town for supplies, it turns out that the Vikings are here, and overhear that Thorfinn's name is being used. Word of this gets back to our favorite unstoppable killing machine, Thorkel. Thorfinn is then brought before Thorkel right away and is told that there is a civil war going on between the different factions of the Vikings. One group choosing to follow Floki and the other following a man named Van. No one can decide on who the new leader of the Vikings should be, as all of the possible candidates are either too old or too young. This is where Thorfinn comes in. As the son of the great Thors, who is in his 20s now, he is the only real candidate that both sides could agree to. However, because of his current views on war, Thorfinn wants no part in becoming a war chief. Floki, realizing that Thorfinn being here at all could compromise his attempts to establish his grandson Balder as the leader, schemes up a plan to have Thorfinn assassinated. As one would expect, things do not go according to the plan, and all hell breaks loose as both sides of the Vikings go to battle, with Thorfinn and his friends caught in the middle of all the action. On paper, this sounds like a compelling plot, and at times it is, but only part of the time. The majority of what happens felt like a retread of things that have happened before. We already spent a lot of page time in the series having Thorfinn's views on war and revenge be changed, and here we are tempting him to return to his old ways yet again. Another aspect I found pretty jarring was the tone. I can appreciate when a writer wants to mix things up a bit from time to time, but for some reason Yukimura was having alternating panels showing heavy amounts of violence and gore, and then would immediately swap to a page devoted to Sigurd and the Three Stooges having themselves stuck in a well or something. The amount of comedic expressions and outbursts in this arc was noticeably higher than those that came before. Now, with that being said, I want to talk about one of the new characters in this arc, and that would be Garm. The best way I can describe this guy is Thorkel 2.0, but with a cringy edginess to him. Like Thorkel, he loves fighting, Doesn't need a reason, just wants to fight all the time, whenever he can. What really got to me of Garm was that he's just a more annoying version of a character we already have, and his main purpose to the story is just to keep bugging Thorfinn to battle him. Like, okay, I get it, we already have half a dozen people that are trying to get Thorfinn the battle, but here's another one, it's just annoying. In the end, though, Thorfinn manages to trick Garm into fighting him without a weapon, which means Thorfinn is easily able to take him out. Garm was just there to be unbearably annoying, and he never really contributed anything to the story. Now, on the other hand, one of my favorite aspects of the Baltic Sea War was when we got to see Halfdan's son Sigurd grow up. For the previous mini arcs, he and his group of Finns have acted like cartoon villains who show up from time to time and try to foil the hero's activity, but usually end up getting themselves into more trouble. Only now at the very end of this arc, do the experiences of everything that has occurred lead to Sigurd reflecting on his actions, rethinking what he actually wants to do with the rest of his life. In the end, he learns he needs to follow his heart's desire, and not the will of his father. Like with my previous Vinland Saga videos, I want to go a bit more in depth about each of the standout characters and how the events of these chapters affected them. So why exactly did Thorfinn get so much focus during this part of the story, only for no development to actually happen to him? He's still a decent character, all things considered, but he doesn't have anything resembling an arc during this part of the story. He starts off with his pacifist ways, and remains true to that all the way through to the end. He came close a couple of times to breaking his promise, but after 65 chapters, he's right back in the exact same place he was at the end of the slave arc, only now he has a girlfriend. Way to go, buddy. Already spoke a bit about how much I liked Gudrid's introduction. I was worried that there was a stretch of time where she was going to be relegated to being a boring background character, but thankfully that was not the case, and by the end she came around and really did step up in some big ways. She did so by having to face the past that she was run away from and grow stronger as a result. So I get that a large portion of this arc was dedicated to tying up loose plot threads from the prologue, but Einar and Leif could have been absent altogether and nothing would have been different. I like the characters, but they really don't do anything but stand around cheering on Thorfinn and the other characters from the sideline like they are a non-Saiyan Dragon Ball Z character. I'm not too sure how I feel about Hild. Her initial introduction was awesome, and she is without a doubt one of the most badass characters in the series. Her backstory is also quite tragic, and I'm a sucker for tragic backstories. And that might be why I'm such a massive One Piece fan in hindsight. Anyways, once she gets acclimated to Thorfinn's group, she too runs into the ongoing issue of characters not really doing a whole lot. She stands around, scowls, tells Thorfinn to watch himself or she's going to shoot him, and then that's about it. Here's the hoping that she has a bigger role to play in the rest of the series. It was nice to see our boy Thorkel the Tall back in action. I think Thorkel, more than any other character, suffered from the tonal whiplash that was going on with this arc. One page he would be going to town on a group of guys with axes, the next he's on the ground pouting like a giant man baby. There was also this very weird scene where Thorkel makes a reference to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and then wrestles a Bigfoot or something. Yeah, this series got really weird at points. I already said I didn't like Garm. He's very much like Thorkel in a way, but just worse in every imaginable way. Most characters in Vinland Saga feel like they could be a real person that has been brought into a fantastical anime reality, but Garm feels like a stereotypical edgy anime rival that found himself in the wrong series. If he never shows up again, I'm not going to be upset. Sigurd and his companions were a pretty consistent source of comedy during this arc. While these moments of humor didn't always land for me, I could appreciate the journey Sigurd had to go on to discover his true self. Having the arc end with Siggy declaring himself independent from his father was a big highlight for me. Okay, so to tie a bow on this video, the Eastern Expedition arc was pretty hit or miss for me. Some aspects were great, like Gudrid and Hild's introductions, as well as the action scenes, but I'd go as far as saying that the majority of the story was completely unnecessary. Despite this page time being used to tie up loose plot threads like Floki having Thor's killed, we didn't need to see that. Thorfinn had already moved on with his life. He had already put his desires for revenge in the past. Why bring this back to the forefront of the story and then do nothing with it? Sure, Thorfinn almost gives in to the temptations to become violent, but he doesn't. Thorfinn doesn't become a new person because of this experience. Thorfinn's character arc is one big flat line from beginning to end over the course of 65 chapters. On top of that, all of the returning characters either have nothing to do or are comedic parodies of themselves. In isolation, it's not a bad arc, but when considering what is the purpose of the greater narrative overall, it's kind of a waste of time. Chapter 100 begins with Thorfinn and friends returning home to get ready for their trip to Vinland. Chapter 165 ends with Thorfinn and his friends returning home to get ready for their trip to Vinland. From my perspective, it does not seem like anyone has learned any new lessons here, just a couple of additional faces being added to the party like Gudrid and Hilb. To compare Vinland Saga to a video game, essentially we took a huge break from the main quest line to go do the remaining side quests. A reward for doing that was some additional experience, money, and a couple of new party members. With the quest log cleared out, the time has come for Thorfinn to tackle the final mission, get into Vinland. But let me just say it right now, I'm not going to be reading the rest of the series at this time. The final arc has only recently begun, so it'll be a few years before anything gets wrapped up for good. Once that happens, I'm going to consider coming back to review the final portion of the series and maybe give a kind of retrospective on it. As for what is coming up next on the channel, I haven't actually done anything game related in a minute, so I'm thinking I'll talk about something I've been playing recently. I'm not 100% sure, we'll see. I already mentioned that the next manga blind review series I'm going to be doing is on the legendary Berserk. So in the coming weeks, I'll be reading the material for the first part of the story and figuring out how I want to present my thoughts on it. If any of that sounds interesting, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the upcoming videos. That's all I have for you guys today. I've been LootingKyle, but remember, be kind to others and have a wonderful day. Take care.